Senate Standing Committee on Education for this special called meeting today, meeting number 5. I would ask that all of our guests in attendance, if you have a cell phone, please turn that to silence or vibrate as we conduct our business today. And it seems to be that for being here, for those in attendance and others. If we would, Secretary, please call the roll. Have put together executive orders, which we had here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I want to thank our governor for his action upon that with doing executive order. But we also knew that statutorily we needed to take the executive order and put that into place. Now, many of us may have philosophical differences about issues such as name, image, likeness, or the transfer portal, or anything to do with college athletics. But it is the nature of where we are today. In this space and in this time, states are now having to grapple with the issue and decide what is best. What's best, number one, for the university, but most importantly, number two, what's best for the student athlete. And I think what you have before you today with this bill is a perfect weave and a thread of finding flexibility and balance with the institution and with the student athlete. Because that's what is the most important thing as we move forward, is what is in the best interest of the student athlete. I do want to thank our guests that are here today. This bill is one that we were going to hear last week, but because of the weather, it caused us to move our schedules and our time frame. And I do want to thank Coach Cal and also Mr. Barnhart for their flexibility to be here with their busy schedule this time of year. I'm going to let Senator McGarvey, kind of get into more about the bill and some details. I'm also happy to answer any questions as we move along. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for our guests for being here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done before now, how we got here, and where we're going with this bill. This is not the first time this bill has been up in front of the General Assembly. We have dealt with this issue for several years. I see Senator Westerfield on the committee. He has worked on this bill for a long time. Senator Westerfield, thank you for your work on this bill. So how did we get here today? Why are the four of us sitting at this table? Senator Wise alluded to it. In June, there was a Supreme Court opinion, United States Supreme Court opinion, which unanimously, I don't think much is done unanimously right now in this country, unanimously said that the NCAA needed to change the way it was treating its student athletes. That cleared the way for athletes to begin using name, image, and likeness. Now, the reality is the NCAA is the best body to promulgate the regulations for how this whole thing works. They have consistently declined that opportunity. The federal level is the next place where this could work for all 50 states. So far, they have declined that opportunity. I want to give some credit to the governor as well. When this went into effect in June, the governor stepped up with an executive order, just like the governors in North Carolina and Ohio, and allowed a framework for name, image, and likeness to begin in Kentucky. And we're here today to make sure that that executive order doesn't go away and to continue to improve upon the process as we're all learning in this new environment of what name, image, and likeness is. So in talking about what name, image, and likeness is, I hate to do this. Let's start off by talking about what it is not, all right? Name, image, and likeness is not paying student athletes to play their sport. That's not what it does. Name, image, and likeness does not allow a university or its athletic department to compensate student athletes beyond the scholarships and already permissible educational benefits. When I think of name, image, and likeness, I think of name, image, and likeness as putting student athletes on the same level as every other student at a university. If you're a musician on scholarship, you can start a YouTube channel or an Instagram feed and give lessons or promote your band. If you're an artist, you can sell your paintings. If you're a journalism student, you can go work somewhere and do freelance writing. You can work at your craft. You can promote yourself. Our student athletes haven't had that opportunity. What this bill does is put forward a framework that says student athletes are on the same level as every other student at a university, and that they can profit off of their name, image, and likeness. Of course, we will take all questions about the bill, but the bill itself, it has the definitions. What we did in the bill largely is state that premise. Name, image, and likeness is allowed for student athletes. Really, we go beyond that, though, and say much of how it is regulated is left up to the universities. we put some parameters on it, but try to be as permissive as possible to let these institutions best help their student athletes. So there are some things that a student athlete cannot do. We do not allow a student athlete to promote an illegal product. We do not allow student athletes to promote a product that is also not allowed by the NCAA. We do not allow student athletes to promote anything that has to do with sports betting or adult entertainment. So, we put some parameters in there. What we also do, though, is say to the institution that the governing board of these institutions, they can set further restrictions that are in line with the university and the university's mission. But beyond those parameters, we give broad latitude to the universities. They're the ones dealing with these student athletes, and they need the flexibility as this law changes to be able to change it. So the governing board of the institution can adopt the policy governing the name, image, and likeness agreements of the institution's student athletes. We require these regulations to be reasonable. They cannot place an undue burden on the student athlete's ability to earn compensation through those name, image, and likeness agreements. They've got to be in writing to the students. They have to be provided to all student athletes. Also, if a student athlete enters into a name, image, and likeness agreement or wants to and the university doesn't think it should, there must be a process for that student to appeal that ruling in a timely manner. We do want this to be to the benefit of the student athlete. That's who we're looking out for in this bill, and that's who we want to protect. We think it does. But the bill goes through, and it really, we think, favors the student athlete while giving the university still some control. And I think this is an important piece too. We prohibit the inducement of student athletes. So you can't use name, image, and likeness to recruit a student athlete to your institution by promising some type of deal. But we also give the university the ability to help these students. As these name, image, and likeness bills come forward, and as the landscape is constantly changing, using the university's resources, they can help their students navigate this new area. Because while they are adults under the law, many of them, I think we can all remember back to when we were college in 18, 19, 20 years old. So we've got a good product in front of us. We will entertain questions on the bill. And I want to turn the floor over to Coach Calipari and Director Mitch Barnhart.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and guests, we thank you for the opportunity to provide perspective on really an important issue for us. I know that we share a commitment to all the students in the state. We want what is best for them while they're with us, and we want to do everything we can to prepare them for what President Capilouto calls lives of meaning and purpose. As part of that commitment to putting students first, the athletics department at the University of Kentucky prepares students for life after college in a variety of ways. It's a focus we have and something we talk about every day. That's a life that may include a pro career for their chosen sport. For most athletes, as you know, it is about preparing them for a number of career paths where they will attain jobs, paths where they will create jobs in the Commonwealth. The landscape in which we do this important work in partnership with you has been rapidly changing. As you know, as of July 1st of last year, college athletes have been allowed to monetize their use of their name, image, or likeness. We have been preparing as a department for this for quite some time, even as we also know that many aspects of this landscape continue to change. Our department has intensified our longstanding commitment to providing best-in-class experiences and opportunities for Kentucky student athletes through our Kentucky Road program. That program includes a premier suite of benefits designed to help more than 500 student athletes from each of our 23 intercollegiate sports programs. The Kentucky Road includes resources to help each of the student athletes enhance and expose their personal brands. Among the benefits, industry-leading support for leveraging individual social media presence through education, opportunity, and data-backed insights. Scholarships for former student athletes until they achieve their bachelor's degrees, regardless of sport and regardless of how long they've been away from the university. Enhanced financial literacy education to help students make the best financial decisions for themselves for the long term, as well as a number of other initiatives in place and others we are considering. The bottom line, our staff has an incredible track record of expanding financial opportunities for our student athletes after their playing careers at the University of Kentucky. These opportunities include helping athletes develop toward professional sports leagues, finding post-eligibility scholarships, and networking opportunities, engaging in job placement programs. I continue to believe in the transformative power of college athletics. It is essential to who we are and what we do. Enhancing those services that provide student athletes to empower them to achieve their dreams is the DNA of who we are at the University of Kentucky Athletic Department. And the NIL offers both challenges and opportunities with respect to that steadfast goal and commitment for our student athletes. That's why we've partnered with industry leaders to provide current student athletes and alumni with content on their use and their personal social media platforms. And we've worked with our student athletes to give them access to brand building best practices. That support will assist them in enhancing their personal brands on well-established and emerging social media platforms, which is where the greatest opportunity lies for monetizing name, image, and likeness. The goal for us is that even as rules change and the landscape in which our students play and work continues to evolve, UK's athletes, student athletes, will be prepared to maximize opportunities while also continuing their educations and benefiting from all the things that come from being on a college campus. There's no question a federal solution that creates a single standard for all student athletes in all states is the best path forward. But we also believe that we shouldn't wait for one uniform federal policy to continue finding ways to support our student athletes and ensure that they have the best possible experience in the area of name, image, and likeness. Over the past 7 months, we've had the opportunity to help our student athletes navigate this space. I want to lend my support for a state law that codifies NIL opportunities for student athletes, places guardrails on what we can and cannot do in terms of our support, and that protects our student athletes and the staff who are there to serve them as well as we navigate these new and uncharted waters. In absence of legislation, we open it to confusion and no protection for our student athletes. Against that backdrop, we believe the legislation before you today, which a number of you have worked so hard on in partnership with the UK and other universities in our state, would do 4 critical things. 1, the bill expressly ensures that student athletes can monetize their name, image, and likeness while maintaining their eligibility to compete at the University of Kentucky. 2, the bill allows universities to guide student athletes through policies that protect them from entering into agreements that could tarnish their brand or reputation, or the brand and reputation of the institution they attend. It allows for connection with legitimate organizations that are concerned and interested in the welfare and ability for the student athlete to enter this space with integrity and confidence. 3, this bill provides liability protection for coaches and athletic staff members who provide general guidance and education to student athletes. That's crucial because the relationship between student athletes and their coaches and staff are some of the most meaningful relationships that student athletes have on campus and throughout their lives. They will seek advice from the people they trust. No one is more trusted in that process and in that space than their coaches. Lastly, and importantly, there's a lot that we don't know. And this bill accounts for the rapidly evolving landscape and provides flexibility needed to help the student athletes navigate it. Things are going to continue to change and evolve. We need that capacity and the flexibility to change and evolve as well. Developing student athletes toward their after-college career is at the center of what we do. That's what we have always done, is what we will continue to do as we move forward. Placing our students first in everything that we do. I know you share that goal and that commitment. We're appreciative of the spirit of the cooperation and collaboration of the work that this group has done on this issue, as I said, continues to evolve here and across the country. So thank you for all you've done. I look forward to your questions, and thank you again for what you do to support our students and our universities.
Well said, Mitch. I'm going to be a little brief, but I first of all, let me thank Chairman Wise, Senator McGarvey, members of the committee for having us here for an opportunity to discuss this important issue, which is confronting my program and all the programs at not only the University of Kentucky, but all of our universities. I'm here to provide insights on this issue as a coach with a lot of years. I'm not going to tell you how many, and you'll know how old I am, but a lot of years of coaching. But I do want to thank the many members of this committee, both Democratic and Republican, who worked with UK and other institutions across this state to address the issue of name, image, and likeness. I would like to thank our AD, Mitch Barnhart, for his leadership as we navigate the changing landscape of NIL. Today, we are met with an opportunity to address this evolving issue as the needs and demands of my players have changed. I'm confident with your interest as well as mine, we will share in creating the best opportunities for players while at the same time allowing men's basketball at UK to remain the gold standard. Thank you for the opportunity to participate. I'm hoping that my many years of service are helpful today, and I stand ready to continue to assist the committee as you work on these issues.
Thank you, Coach Cal. We have several members with questions. I would ask the members to be concise. We will start with Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Coach Cal, and Mr. Barnhart. And I guess my question is for you, Mr. Barnhart. One of my concerns, and I think this is a great bill, but one of my concerns for the student athletes is coming into a considerable sum of money at the beginning of a career, and knowing how to deal with that, and I guess trying to avoid unintended consequences. But in the bill, it talks about financial and life, financial literacy and life skills, and 5 hours of instruction every 2 years. I guess it's my hope that I know that you run a quality program, Mr. Barnhart. Your credibility has never been questioned, and I know you work for all the student athletes at University of Kentucky. But is there plans to do more with the student athletes to help them with their financial dealings with this money that they might receive than what's in the bill?
Senator Higdon, thank you for the question. We when they come as freshmen, especially if they come in the summer, we begin them immediately on the program I referenced in my comments called the Kentucky Road. That program is a variety of orientations to college life, whether it's the way you approach your academics, the way you approach your preparation physically in your sport, but as importantly, anything that you would do as you move forward in your life. We have different folks that we bring in, and we've brought in the same young man for about 4 years now, 3 or 4 years now. And he comes in and brings a seminar on financial literacy among a variety of things that we do within the Kentucky Road. So our young people get much more than the 5 hours. They get it's an ongoing walk through. First year, then it's the second year we graduate them into a different process. The third year, and by the time they leave, they have foundationally grown to the point they're ready to leave and go do things on their own. So we feel very comfortable, and the compliance, our Executive Associate Athletic Director, Rachel Newman Baker, works very closely with our CATS program, where our Student Athlete Career Services and Student Athlete Experiences are located. And the combination of all of those gives us the backdrop to be able to provide them the education they need in that space very, very well.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I may also address Senator Higdon's question very quickly. Director Barnhart said it well in his remarks when he said there's good guardrails in this legislation. Some of the guardrails we have in this legislation, I think, could also be read as some suggestions as well. And if you look on page 8 of the sub in subsection 5 there, it says an institution's governing board may establish a program to provide name, image, and likeness agreement resources and ongoing support to the institution's student athletes. So there's that ongoing support. The mission and the extent of the program shall be established by the governing board and may include providing impartial analysis of potential name, image, and likeness agreements, referring third parties and soliciting potential name, image, and likeness agreements to student athletes or their athlete agents, and maintaining educational resources on name, image, and likeness for student athletes. So we put that in there as well.
Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Coach Cal, you've obviously coached thousands of student athletes throughout your career. Straight ahead, Coach. And I know that with the students that you deal with, the student athletes, you're always concerned about all of that child, all of that student, their financial situation, their family situation. And I know when you mentor them, you help them make decisions whether or not to move on to the NBA sooner or later. And I I think that's something that seems to be somewhat unique to UK, and I commend you for that. Do you think that this legislation will help to keep student athletes, basketball players, especially upper echelon players, at the colleges, universities longer? Or do you think is there enough financial impact with this to keep them there longer as student athletes?
Senator, thank you. My comment would be the kids that have made mistakes leaving early because of it will stay. Now, if someone's a #1 draft pick, what I would probably say to him is if you want to do what's right for you and your family, you probably should go. If you want to do what's right for me and my family, you probably should stay. But the ones I worry about are the ones I say, are you sure, Coach, I have to do this? You talk to the parents, are you sure? I think this would have people saying, if I'm not ready, and let me say this, maybe a young man that could be drafted in the top 10, and he says, but I'm not ready, but I have to go. But now it's, no, you don't. No, you don't. You know, make the right decision for the long run for your career. So I believe the ones it needs to help or need to help them make a decision, it will.
So if this passes, you can guarantee more NCAA championships, is that correct?
I thought they weren't supposed to ask me those questions.
Sorry, Coach, I tried. Thank you. Mitch planted that one.
Senator Stivers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the group, this is more of a collective question because when this was first brought to our attention, there were several things that we discussed. And you've talked about the bill, but why do we need the bill? Such as safe harbors and what it means to the student related to being in compliance or out of compliance, and the fact that a state has passed a statute to protect both the institution and the student. As well, to the senators, when we looked at this, the link was made back to the Uniform Law Commission to have guidance as to a uniform law that has been, for lack of better term, kind of promulgated through our series of appointed drafters in a 50-state collaboration. So, I think for the purpose of understanding the process and why it is necessary versus what the bill does, however you wish to take it up and discuss it, because that was the first thing that was brought to my attention, that if we don't do something, we put people at risk. At risk of what?
You want me to, Mitch, you go first and I'll go.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Senator Stivers. Great to see you all. And I think there's a variety of things, and I'll touch on them. I think, one, we're 7 months into this, and we know so little about it. We know a lot about it on one hand, and we don't know where it goes from here. And I think this bill gives flexibility to the growth in that place. Our department has had over 800 transactions that we have on file from our student athletes, from about 250 student athletes. So that would clearly indicate that not every student athlete has a desire to be in that space, but at those that want to be in that space, it is really important that we protect them in that space. So we have obviously a lot of student athletes that have multiple transactions, and it ranges everything from an unbelievable representation of a woman by the name of Masai Russell, who runs on our track and field program, and she has probably worked harder at her brand identity than any athlete we've got in our program. It is remarkable what she has done, the way she works at it every day to do the things she does with social media, and she has probably, I'm guessing, 350,000 followers in what she does. It's pretty remarkable. To Will Levis, who I watched him as he walked through our football season, just continue to navigate the space really, really interestingly. I think the things that are risk for us are literally, as this has developed over the last 7 months, tens of thousands of people nationwide have gotten involved in this space with varying degrees of intention. And I think that that's something that's really important to understand, is the intention of everyone who's involved. Some people do it for competitive equity for their institutions. Some people do it for the welfare and the ability of the student athletes to exist in the space. Some do it for their own personal financial gain at the expense of the student athletes. Some of them want to leverage relationships for future gain, whether that might be something to agent representation and those kinds of things. And I think that there's also a reference check for everyone involved. It allows us to have an opportunity to reference check for everyone to be involved who's involved in this space. So really, really important. The other risk, I think, is there's lack of clarity in terms of the supporters of institutions of higher learning and sponsors. They're a little unclear without this kind of a legislation as to what direction do we go to support the institutions that we love and the student athletes that we want to see grow. How do we do that? What is the best pathway for us to do this? This gives us some guidelines and gives us some direction for those people as well that have been so loyal to these institutions for so long. And I think also we need some ability to have everyone function nationally within the same framework. And short of a federal legislative effort, this gives us the ability to do that kind of work, at least for the time being, until something else can come and change down the road. I hope that helps.
Senator, my take on it, and I love the way you asked the question, why do we need this? Well, we'd all rather have a federal bill, but it's not coming anytime soon. I've heard coaches say, well, we'd rather not have a bill. We could go do whatever we want. The problem with that is you don't have any safe harbor. How about this one? The NCAA could come back and say, you're wrong. We're not going to let you do that. And now all of a sudden you're dealing with stuff that way. The EO, some agreed, some didn't. I thought it was great, and I thank the governor, and other states followed suit. But this bill, I think it's a model bill. I think other states are going to look at this bill and say, wow. I also think the federal government will look as they start to deal with this, and they're going to look at this bill. Because across the board, again, at times I think of my own program, Mitch, don't I? Mitch has a bunch of programs to think of. I'm thinking of mine. They put in this bill that you could sign whatever contract you want, but when you leave the university, you can choose to be out of it. So I'll give you an example how big that is. A player that plays basketball for us or Louisville or Western, whoever, they sign a contract for 3 years in basketball because they get them to sign it for 3 years. They leave after a year. They're tied to that contract their rookie year in the NBA and their second year. And maybe that contract, they never intended it for that. This bill says to your players that come in this state, whatever you sign, when you leave, that thing is null and void. Then someone said, well, how is that governed? Ignorance is not a defense. It's our state law. It is not a defense. So they are able to do that. I look at this and say, we need this. If we're going, and the flexibility that Mitch talked about, Senator, we don't know where this is going. I do not want to be in the negotiation business. I'm not going to do that. But this may end up saying other states they can do it. Well, what does that force us to do? I'll be honest with you, I still won't do it. Now, there may be someone within athletics that we appoint, maybe, but that's way down. This thing gives us the ability, the flexibility. If Ohio, and I want to say this, you understand Alabama had to repeal their bill. They just repealed it because it was too restrictive. And at the time they did it, they thought this is great. They had a celebration. And 5 months later, they're up there, it's done. And it was signed off by the governor after they lost 2 recruits. Done. It's out. And so this thing, the flexibility, the ability to give Mitch the room to look at this and say how we do this, yet you protect these student athletes. You're protecting them. You're giving them opportunities. You're not restricting them. And now it's up to the universities to do their part, and I think every one of them are going to step up and do what's right for these kids. And that's what we should all be about.
I'll just add really quickly, it's hard to follow Coach Cal, and my grandfather said never sell past the close. But Senator, to give you an idea of where this is coming from, I pulled these bullet points off the NCAA's website. And they say that athletes can now engage in name, image, and likeness. Athletes can use professional services as part of name, image, and likeness. And students in states without these laws can still do it. So when you think about that and what you heard Coach Cal just say about all the ways it benefits these kids, all the ways we're looking out in contract law for 18-year-old kids, all the way we are regulating this, giving the universities the tools to help these kids, that's why this law is important.
Senator Givens.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I want to first acknowledge that Chairman Wise, you and Senator McGarvey put a lot of work into this legislation, because over the course of the interim, we had a great committee meeting. A lot of question, a lot of answer, Q&A discussion. This has been in the works for a period of time. All of you have spoken eloquently. Coach, Director, thank you for your leadership and discussion on this. But again, let's go back to the fact we're talking about student athletes, 18 to 24 years of age. This student is stepping likely onto a college campus for the first time as a freshman. It's a new world to this young, talented male or female, the way the law is written at any of our public or private post-secondary institutions. So they're in this new world. And now today, because of NIL, it's a brand new world. We're getting ready to write rules around what this brand new world looks like. It's a 21-page piece of legislation that's been well thought out and worked on. Striking that balance, Senator McGarvey, that you talked about of the framework and the parameters. And Coach, you referenced the chaos in Alabama as they had to rethink what they had done. Finding that balance to protect that young person, allow the institution to do all it can do to a point to help this young person navigate this path is the precedent for my question around the language that we see in the sub, specifically on page 5. Obviously, I think the language is exactly right in terms of we can't use NIL for an inducement to attract talent. We can't use NIL as an inducement. That should never be something we do. But once that student is on campus as a current student athlete, boy, if the university, which in this case is defined in the language, could help negotiate. Now that's a big word, negotiate. That's a critical word in the conversation. But as we write these rules, if the institution can help negotiate once that student is on campus, that may be something we want to try to do, provided it's within the bounds of what's right. And I would love to hear the four of you offer some insights on that, if you would, because our current language says institutions shall not negotiate any part of an NIL agreement on behalf of a current or prospective student athlete. Keep the perspective as something you can't do for inducement. But boy, once we get them on campus, these young people, they need what these institutions can do.
Senator, I thank you for the question. I'm going to let Cal finish after I open with a comment or two. I think he's got some real perspective as a coach. I would say that our heartbeat of who we are is education, and I don't ever want to lose sight of that. We are absolutely an educational enterprise first and foremost. Secondly, we want to make sure that we give young people an opportunity to pursue their dreams, to participate at the highest level of Division I college athletics at the University of Kentucky or other institutions in our state, in our particular situation, the Southeastern Conference. So that's really, really important. The third thing we want to make sure that we do is we have a phrase we say we want to equip them to launch them, equip them for life, and it's really you say it's a cliche. It's not. It's we live by that, and we have done that effectively well for the time that I've been the director of athletics, and certainly what Coach Cal has done in terms of his tenure at the University of Kentucky for over a decade now. So I think that's really important. Our DNA, what we do, is about education, and it's about preparing them on the field and for life. So with that premise in mind, what our DNA is probably not is in terms of being able to negotiate deals for them. That is not who I don't think we're supposed to be at this point in time. But I do believe it is our opportunity, our responsibility to provide the connection between them and people that may be interested. Let me give you an example. Someone calls our office, and this has occurred. They call our office and say, we would really like to get in touch with athlete X or Y, or whatever that happens to be. We would like to do something with them in this NIL space. Outstanding. Let us connect you with their representative who is better inclined and has a liability to work with them, or a contract to work with them in this space. And almost all of our student athletes have created that representation, either through their families or through themselves or through someone else. And that is coming from a variety of places. And there is a safe space in that for us. It gives us the ability to connect those dots. So rather than us being in the negotiation space, we are telling them, please go to your representative who has your personal interest and knows you better than probably anybody else in this area, and you create that opportunity, whether that's your family member or someone else. And then that keeps our coaches doing what they do best, and that's coaching their teams and creating the culture in the locker rooms that we're trying to do when we take to floor. And then they equip them in amazing other ways, but that is probably not our expertise or our DNA, and we would hesitate to be able to make deals that might not be very good for them. That might not be our expertise. If someone asked me about social media posts and I said, you know what, I think you're worth this, and I missed it by about a number, that would be a problem. Okay, so I don't want to do it. But I do know I can turn to Coach Cal and say, how did you manage that situation in our locker room? He'll manage that top shelf of anybody in the country. So, Cal, I'll defer to you.
Senator, that your question, there's not a coach in the country that wants to be in the middle of negotiating contracts. But there's a state a little north of us that just put a law in that said they could. So my point is, again, flexibility. How do we make this? We don't want to do it. It's not what we want to do. But 3 years from now, do we really want to come back and change this bill? So how do we make? I don't know that. I'm struggling just coaching basketball. So I will tell you that it would be something that I would say, how do we make this flexible so we could? Let me say, when you say inducements, you can't do stuff with kids that are in high school, or that you can't. Whether it be the SEC or the NCAA, they've got to deal with that. But I'll say this, basketball players don't come to Kentucky because of NIL. They just want to make sure you got it in order and it's organized and I have a chance to do well. They come, we've had 23 kids graduate. 3 will graduate this year. 5 graduated in 3 years. We've also had them graduate to the NBA. And right now their salaries are $3 billion, and within 3 years it'll be $5 billion. They're not coming here for $50,000 of NIL money or $100,000. But the same thing holds. How do we have Mitch the ability to look at this in a year or two to say, this isn't what we want, but we're getting clobbered? And Kentucky basketball is the gold standard. It is. People are looking to us. What are we doing? And I hate to tell you, what is your state doing? And so we're in a great position. And the more flexibility, I trust Mitch, because if you've ever been around, he wants to win now at everything. Soccer, he paces. Softball, he paces. He wants to win. He's not going to put his teams at a disadvantage, but none of us, would you agree, Mitch, want to go down this road? We just don't.
Okay, sure.
Senator Givens, thank you for the question. And Coach is exactly right, as well as Mr. Barnhart. You know, it's become with NIL, maybe even before that, an arms race in terms of schools competing. And with what we're seeing with this legislation and other states' legislation, it is daily, weekly of things we're having to track, things we're having to make changes in this bill. And you're right, Senator McGarvey's been working on this, Senator Westerfield, Representative Boland in the House, different ones. And the drafts we've had in the past, even on this bill, has continually had to make changes and improvements. And when we've seen Texas maybe not do anything, seeing what's happened with recruiting classes, we see Alabama, we see Ohio. we also, when we leave here after 60 days, we need to make sure that this bill is fine-tuned, because we're not gaveling back in. We're not going to be back in for a while after we leave here, and we want that flexibility, and it's built in here. We want a good product. And I do think this bill will be a model, and I appreciate Coach Cal saying that. I do think other states are going to look at this, but also this is a bill that's going to continuously have changes made to it. I see this as one, even session upon session, until the federal government takes this under wraps, and that's not going to be anytime soon. They're going to punt. It's going to be Kentucky law. So that's my comments back, Senator Givens. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, and I'll just add, remember what I said at the beginning. The NCAA should have handled this. They didn't. Congress should have handled this. They haven't. It's up to us. And in being up to us, we've got to have that flexibility in here for all of our universities in Kentucky, not just the University of Kentucky represented here today, but all of our universities and all of our student athletes. And Senator Givens, I think that's a great question. I would point you on the same page to the language starting on line 21, which says the governing board of an institution may adopt a policy governing the name, image, and likeness agreement of the institution's student athletes. So if we can do a floor amendment and take that word current out of line 6, we are giving the flexibility without committing the university to do anything. We're simply giving them the ability to, if it's in the best interest of the university and the student athletes, the flexibility to do this without having to come back to the legislature.
Colleagues, that may be the best way to go, is take a look at a floor amendment. And my thinking there is along the lines of we'd hate to see the headline that a program has not violated an NCAA rule, but they've broken a state law. That would be a headline we definitely would not want to see. And the way it's written, negotiate any part. Does that mean that when someone shows up and tries to sign as a representative for that student athlete after they're on your campus, and maybe you've got knowledge, Director, that this rep is not the most reputable representative, you can't say to that student, yeah, I don't know about that organization. They're not the best to work with. That could potentially be misinterpreted as negotiating. So let's have a whole thought on it, but we may want to take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more question. This will be the final question. Senator Thomas. We do have a motion on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is directed to either Senator McGarvey or Senator Wise. And discussions I've had recently about this piece of legislation with my friends and with the public deal with the reach of this bill. How far does it reach in parameters? And so I want to direct your attention to page 3, beginning on line 14, that defines student athlete. And tell me if I'm correct or incorrect. My understanding is that this bill begins to kick in as soon as a student who may be in high school declares that I want to come to the University of Kentucky to play sports, basketball, football, softball, whatever. That's when this bill kicks in, and it continues until such time as that student athlete eligibility terminates during their senior year, or as early as their freshman year when they say, I want to declare and go pro. Am I correct that those are the parameters? That is the reach of this bill. It doesn't touch any student who's in high school who's not declared or signed a letter of intent to participate in college athletics.
That's correct, Senator Thomas. I'll point out Senator Thomas represents the University of Kentucky. But Senator Thomas, one important distinction there, they must have signed a national letter of intent. It cannot be a declaration. They must have signed a contract before a university can talk to them about these things.
That is the final word for today. Thank you for your presentation. We have a motion on Senate Bill 6 as amended by committee substitute. We have a motion by Senator Stivers. Do we have a second? Senator Wilson, I believe, it was the first second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Givens. Senator Harper Angel. Senator Higdon. Senator Forgy Kerr. Senator Meredith. Senator Neal. Senator Southworth, Senator Stivers.
Explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
Explain my I vote. As it has been discussed here that certain people haven't acted, but for the chamber for which I preside, we have acted, and we've acted in a bipartisan way. Therefore, I vote aye.
Senator Thomas, Senator West,
Aye.
Senator Wilson, and Chairman Wise.
Briefly explain my aye vote.
Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. Many times we look at bills and legislation, we see the sponsors besides names and those of us who vote for it. But I've got to get a lot of credit to our LRC bill drafter on this, Josh Collins, who's immediately to your left. Josh Collins worked and researched on this bill diligently, painstakingly. Josh, I want to personally thank you for the blood, sweat, tears that you put into this because, as Coach said and Mr. Barnhart, if it's model legislation, it was your work that helped do this. Thank you very much. I want to thank all the universities across the Commonwealth who worked with myself and with Senator McGarvey on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Maybe you can give a discussion in CSL on this topic next year. We have 10 aye votes, 0 no votes. Senate Bill 6, as amended by the committee, substitute passes with favorable expression. We appreciate all the speakers today. Chair Wise, Senator McGarvey, Coach Cowd, Director Barnhart. This is a serious subject, and want to thank you for preventing bad outcomes. And I don't know what would happen if I was a 18-year-old with $200,000 in my pocket starting class, but thank you for your guidance on this important topic. Do I have a motion for adjournment?